Hello, this is Donna with Sparrowstudios7 coming to you with I Read and I Learn with commentary on Genesis 6. So, there are several notes in my Bible surrounding the corruption of the human race that happens in chapter 6, as well as the individual Noah, who God commands to build an ark so that him and his family can be saved from the destruction of the world. So I'm going to read the first one. It covers verses 1 and 2, and then pick some others to talk about as well with you guys. So before going on to the major paragraphs that they have for us in my study Bible. So here we go. Chapter 6, 1 and 2. The note says, sons of God have generally been understood as fallen angels. The same Hebrew phrase in Job, chapter 1, 6, chapter 2, verse 1, chapter 38, 7, Psalms 29, 1, and chapter 89, verse 7. This interpretation is prominent in ancient Jewish and Christian literature, talking about Enoch, chapter 6, 1 through chapter 7, 6 in Genesis, Justin Margin Apology 2.5, and is apparently supported by the New Testament in 1 Peter 3, 8 to chapter 3, verses 8 to 20, and 2 Peter chapter 2, 4, so in Jude chapter 1, verses 6, 7. Some interpreters do not believe God would permit angels to procreate with humans and doubt that the above New Testament text should be read in this way. Another possibility is that sons of God refer to the righteous descendants of Seth, while the beautiful women were the female descendants of Cain's wicked line. This interpretation is in harmony with Genesis 4:17 through chapter 5:32, but is weakened by the language that in chapter 6, 1 through 2, which seems to refer to the daughters of humanity in general, not the daughters of Cain specifically. Others believe that sons of God refer to tyrannical human kings, possibly demon-possessed, who took Lamech's polygamy in chapter 4, verse 19 with Ada and Zillah, to a new height of wickedness by seizing the daughters of the righteous. Language reminiscent of chapter 3, verse 6, saw and took, shows the rebellious nature of this act. So I'm going to talk about lifespan and then the Nephilim quickly before going on to talk specifically about Noah. Okay. The note for chapter 6, verse 3, will not put up with. Many think that this is an announcement of God's decision to withdraw the restraining influence of his spirit from human society and allow human wickedness to run its full course. Others think it means that God would withdraw his life-giving breath from humans at an earlier age. Ruach, the Hebrew term for spirit, can also mean breath. See chapter 6:17 and chapter 7:22, and also Psalm 105:29 through 30. The normal lifespan will be no more than 120 years. Literally, his days will be 120 years. It is possible that this was a new restriction on the number of years individual would generally be allowed to live. So, the NLT, or the New Living Timeline, I think. However, for generations after the flood, humans lived well beyond 120 years. An alternative interpretation sees this as a 120-year grace period before the arrival of the flood. So both it's highlight supported, by verses. So the first interpretation that humans live well beyond 120 years, but then this is what people would be allowed to live as. The Genesis 11:10 to 26. The alternative for 120-year grace period before the arrival of the flood is John 3 to 4, Matthew 24:37 to 38, 1 Peter 3:20, as well as 2 Peter 2:5. Feel free to go look those up. The last note before Noah I wanted to read was about giant Nephilites. And part of the reason why I think the Nephilim are so interesting is because my adopted grandma really loved looking into Christian conspiracy theories. And there are actually graves found all over the world that prove that the Nephilim were actually real. You can go look it up. It's very interesting. So in chapter 6, verse 4, giant Nephilites, or Hebrew Nephilim, the term may mean fallen ones. The context implies that they were the offspring of the sons of God and would be destroyed in the flood. Numbers 13:31 through 33 use the same term to describe other giants who were hostile towards God's people and would also be destroyed. See also Deuteronomy 2:11, which connects the Anakite Nephilim with another group called the Rephaim. Alright, so what's heartbreaking, Feeney, it's okay. What's heartbreaking about Genesis 6 is that God decides that all of humanity has fallen so far into sin that he needs to start over. Like I mentioned yesterday, both lines from Seth and Cain eventually fall into the same trap of evil. And it gets so bad that God calls on one man in his family line to start over with the human race on the earth. And that man happened to be Noah. And he was a descendant of Seth. Okay, so what it says about Noah, his name means reliever of pain. Noah was the son of Lamech, a descendant of Seth. Lamech might have hoped that Noah, whose names mean rest or relief, would ease the curse of hardship in working the ground. God used Noah to help relieve the world of evil. God intended to destroy creation because of pervasive human wickedness, but he decided to preserve Noah. God gave Noah, a righteous and blameless man, precise instructions for building the ark, in which only the 8 people of his family would be saved, along with every kind of creature. When Noah and his family finally emerged from the ark after the flood, Noah pleased God by building an altar and sacrificing burnt offerings. So that's getting a little bit further ahead, but essentially he ends it with hope. God selects someone who he sees as righteous and walks closely to God, so that the human race may continue in a God-honoring way. A lot of people have different views about the flood, but at the end of the day, sin is abolished, and God ends chapter 6 again with hope and the promise that things will get better post-flood. And he gives people a warning by telling Noah before the flood happens so that he can prepare and warn others in the hopes that they will turn. God always gives us a choice to make things right. Have a great day.